What is the weirdest thing you saw someone doing because they thought they were alone? I once walked in on this kid trying to suck his own dong. I just walked out of the nearly empty year 6 classroom as fast as possible. It's not that weird, but a while ago I walked into class a bit early and no one was in the room except for this one guy sitting in kind of in the middle of the class. I knew the guy but we weren't great friends. Well, when I walked in he was licking his knee. I have no idea why, but he was just licking his knee and then he looked up at me and immediately stopped and I just walked out. I don't even know. Poor guy. Probably always wondered if he could lick his knee but never could work up the courage to do it until he was early for class and alone. Just to have you walk in and lock eyes with him mid-lick, scaring him for life. Walked into a bathroom in college and this guy was using the urinal with his back to me, and as soon as I opened the door to said bathroom I heard him saying to himself, "My dong is so freaking tiny." I instantly left and have no clue if he even knew I was there. He was probably fishing for a second opinion. Walked in on a kid holding his waistband out and blowing a hand dryer directly on his dong in my high school bathroom. I vividly remember the snap of his basketball short waistband as we made eye contact. Go on. Around 8th grade during lunch break I walked in on the quiet kid from my class standing in front of a bathroom sink utilizing a piece of ham. Ham was served that day as some kind of masturbatory aid. I absolutely froze in bewilderment and horror as I was trying to process what this weird skin flap he had wrapped around his dong was, until it was subsequently dropped. I was myself a bit awkward back then and just said something along the lines of "okay, sorry," and hastily closed the door. Never told anyone. May you even apologize to him. I used to work with a guy in a warehouse. One day I came back from the shop floor and he was having a full-on argument with the fricking broom. That is something I would do. I for some reason get into arguments with inanimate objects, usually when it doesn't do its goddamn specified job. Not super weird, more endearing. We'd been drinking by the fire at a friend's house and it had gotten late. His house has a gravel path that runs from the garden to the front of the house, running along the side of the house. We decided to leave this way to avoid unnecessarily waking up anyone else in the house. Anyway, we said our goodbyes but for some reason thought it would be funny to hang back and watch him stumble about the kitchen through the window on the side path. For the next 20 minutes he was tidying up, but kept turning to his dog, chatting away with it, making faces at it, and telling him how much of a good boy he was. Never seen him in such a pure light before. The title gives away the punchline. But once I had a scary ride on an airport shuttle bus. You know, the ones that go from the terminal to the rental car facilities. I was returning from the rental car place to go back to the terminal and I was the only one on the bus. The driver was taking the turns a little too rough, and he was barely coming to a stop at the traffic signs. He started singing loudly to himself. I thought he was crazy. As we pulled up to the terminal, I went to get off the bus. I set my suitcase on the sidewalk outside the bus and went to grab my second bag. The driver came out to help with the luggage, and I caught him trying to put my bag back on the bus. My first thought was, this guy's trying to kidnap me. A second later it clicked, he thought his bus had been empty, hence the singing and less careful driving, and thought I was just getting on the bus at the terminal for the first time. When I said I had been on the whole time, he was shocked. One of my female co-workers came into the break room. She didn't see that I was sitting back by the snack machine on my phone. After sitting down at one of the far tables, she reaches up the sleeve of her t-shirt and rubs her hand into her armpit. She then brought her hand to her nose and smelled her fingers. Then I thought I was going to be sick as she licked her fingers. She did this several times thinking no one was watching. Then another co-worker walked in and called back to me, and she spun around to see I was there the entire time. Damn, that's nasty. At first I thought, well, sniffing your armpit is okay-ish as I do that too sometimes just to check. However, licking it. Finally I can share this story. I used to work at a police department at a community college and one night I had to work the night shift, which meant closing down the entire campus and securing it while patrolling. Well, when I got back to the station, the captain had already left along with the chief, so it was just me, dispatch, and my sergeant, which he was in his office. As I'm walking towards the dispatch room to return the keys that unlocks every single door on campus, I hear the dispatcher talking to himself in a kiddish way, high-pitched voice with some giggling. Now keep in mind, it's 2 in the morning and this guy is like 65 years old, so I'm a bit freaked out. As I get closer, I intentionally make my footsteps noticeable so I can give him time to quit what he's doing and behave well. Normal again. Unfortunately, he didn't hear my footsteps, so I walked in on him still making the voices and giggling, and he literally jumped from his seat and turned pale. I didn't say a word and acted as if I didn't hear a thing and placed the keys where they belong and skedaddled the frick out of there. I was in class at elementary school, maybe 11 or 12 years old, and the teacher was doing a presentation. The room had the lights out and there was this kid in the back right corner, almost next to me. But as the teacher was explaining something, we were all paying attention to her. So I turned around and looked at this kid and he was flashing his DCK really fast, like pants up, pants down, up, down. Almost like a flashing contest. LOL, how many times can you flash your dong in a minute type of crap. When he saw me he stopped and left the room. He later became my friend. Never asked him about it though. A girl I was in rehab with said she came home to her wealthy condo on the Upper West Side while going through horrible withdrawals. She was going to crap her pants, so she ran into the mailroom where all the mailboxes are for the tenants. She bent over doggy style holding her knees and began to spray crap all over the wall. While she was in the middle of spraying out hot brown lava, the doorman walked in and caught her in the act. After she finished while he was watching and all, she just pulled her pants up and went upstairs. The doorman never said anything to her or anybody she knew of, and no one ever asked her about it. She said it was the most embarrassing thing that she has ever been caught doing. I once walked into an office and saw a man hunched over in the corner intently smelling a glass of water. I tried to politely ignore him, but he loudly announced, "It's not what it looks like. I'm smelling the water." When I was like 10, we used to go to the library to play games on the PC. There were like 20 and one guy was sitting at the last one against the window. There were like 2 seats between us. His ears were moving all the time and he was sitting a bit weird. Then I noticed the reflection of the screen in the window. This guy was looking at middle-aged women in diapers. It was so weird I started laughing and he looked at me all weird. Closed the PC, jumped up and speed walked out the library. It was so weird. That's a weird fetish. Walked in on my brother looking at Pokemon P once when he thought I was at school. He forgot it was only a half day. Please tell me that you bring this up occasionally. I was on the swim team in high school. I like to smack my butt cheeks when I'm alone. I ran into the locker room during a swim meet and proceeded to hammer out the beat to "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins on my butt cheeks. My swim team captain saw this and bursted out laughing and crying. I sometimes try to imagine the shock and all that he must have gone through seeing this, but it still makes me cringe. Nowadays, I stick to that or the belly bongos in the comfort of my own home. I do this too. I'm glad I'm not alone, LOL. I caught my very hot female flatmate masturbating by grinding on the sofa armrest with her back to me. I walked out quietly. She never knew. Should have came back into the room wearing a makeshift saddle. Okay, I'm late, but few days ago I'm walking out of my apartment and hear some noise on the window next door. I turn around and there's a pigeon just sitting on the windowsill. As soon as we lock eyes, the pigeon poops. A lot. All over the windowsill. He has this look of utter terror in his eyes. I'm uncomfortable. The pigeon is uncomfortable. The windowsill is dirty. The moment was very intimate and I don't know how the poor bird felt when I caught it mid-poop. I'm sorry, birdie. I hope you don't have to go to therapy because of me. You scared the crap out of him. I noticed that one of my students had signed out an organ practice room in the university music department, but he wasn't in the locked room, even though the organ blower was turned on. When I unlocked the door to turn off the instrument and lights, I heard sounds coming from behind the console and discreetly glanced over its lid to see 2 organ majors going at it, oblivious that I had entered the locked room. Rather than embarrass them as I described here some time ago, I quietly left and let them finish in the privacy of their locked space. Only later did I mention that practice rooms should be used solely for that function and no other purpose. He got the message without having to spell it out. I read that as 2 major organs going at it, and like it better that way. When I was going through the teen angst phase, I used to sneak out of the house at night and walk around the neighborhood between 2-3 am. I didn't indulge in anything like vandalism or weed smoking, just walked around in the silence. There was a family in my neighborhood that had a terrible reputation. Dad was a violent alcoholic. Mom was gone for long periods of time. Middle son, my age, is now doing time for murder. Youngest son was already known to the cops for a variety of misdeeds. And the oldest son was a thug who did things like strong-arm robberies and breaking into cars. He was accused of rape but somehow beat the rap. His name was Pat, and he was an all-around rotten bastard. So one night around 3 am, I'm walking past their house and I see the lights on in the living room. There, through the picture window, I see Pat walk into the room and walk over to the stereo. It was a mild spring night and I could hear him fiddle with an album and the record player through the open windows. This was a while ago. He settled back into a chair and in a moment the Carpenters started singing Close to You. He sat there until the song was over, then played it again. He may have played it over and over, but twice was enough for me. I moved on. Pat was later killed in a drug deal gone wrong. I wonder if they played the Carpenters at his funeral. That's such a soft, sweet song. You witnessed something rare and worth remembering, I think. My GF college dorm room roommate doing the vagina finger smell test when her BF left the room to the bathroom. It took about 7-8 seconds for her to do it. I guess it smelled fine because he spent the night. I just want to say, on behalf of all men, thanks to the ladies who have the presence of mind to check in advance. When my father is working in his workshop, he has a lot of conversations with himself. It's quite funny to go into the workshop and ask if he was talking to me. A friend of mine caught her 5-year-old little brother naked lying on his stomach in the hallway and propelling himself forward by pushing off of the hallway walls while whisper shouting snake, snake, snake with each movement forward. That seems pretty par for the course for a 5-year-old, honestly. I was working in a basement office downtown. We had those high windows that daylight basements have, with an alcove on the outside of the building that had a little cement wall about 3 feet high. Kind of made the recess the windows were in like a cubby. Well, one day we see the legs of someone jumping down into the alcove. Nice legs, pretty flowered dress. She's facing away from the window. We are looking up at her, and she drops her drawers, pops a squat and starts taking a huge dump. We all had a very clear view of her butthole and the poop coming out. We were in hysterics and horrified. She clearly thought she'd found a private little toilet. Big nap. She had 6 people watching, unable to tear our eyes away from the sight. I can see this so clear in my mind's eye. I hate you LOL. I used to work for a tech company in Silicon Valley and would occasionally work late, 9 p.m.ish. Nobody would be around but the occasional security guard doing rounds. I worked in the same building as another employee who also tended to work late, but on opposite ends of said building. When I would leave and walk to my car, I would always see this employee through the large pane windows, sitting at his workspace with his shirt off. He kept his pants and shoes on, but was always topless late at night. He had a very hairy back, so I guess it counts as a sweater. TLDR. Coworker would work topless at night when he thought nobody was around. I read TLDR and then decided to read the whole thing. I was going to my home after a long trip and it was midnight, about 1 am. While I was about 1 kilometer away from my house, I notice a man just leaning on a wall laughing. I come a little closer a bit more and I realize that he was jacking off to a used condom. When he saw me, he started running the other way screaming "frick you." He wasn't alone, but I think he thought no one was watching. My sophomore year of high school, there was a kid who was super quiet. He literally never talked to anyone and I felt bad, so one day I started telling him jokes and working with him if we had to get in groups in class. Apparently I made an impact and he developed quite a crush on me. He asked me out and I had to kindly turn him down. That would have been fine, but then he started getting kind of creepy. Like he'd fully turn around and stare at me during class. He'd look away if I looked at him, but my best friend sat next to me and said if she looked at him he would lock eyes for a moment and then just keep staring. He also told me fun stories such as his uncle killing a deer and the origin of Stockholm Syndrome. One day during gym class I was playing badminton with some friends while he was just walking laps around the gym. At one point we stopped and were talking. The rackets and birdie were on the ground behind us. He walked by, picked the birdie up, and kept walking. I think he thought we didn't realize, but we all saw. He then proceeded to put it in his mouth, walk almost all the way around the gym and then sprint down into the locker room. A little while later he was back and just tossed it onto the ground where he'd picked it up from. I don't know what he did with that birdie down there, but I don't think I'd like to find out. I was singing in the bathroom when I was a kid. I heard my sister on the other side of the door. A normal Pyrian would stop the embarrassing singing. Instead I paused then muttered, "Oh good, she's gone." I then sang louder and more embarrassingly than before. My sister couldn't be convinced that I knew she was there. She thought it was dang hilarious and would laugh randomly for about 3 days. Brother of the Year award. I'll pipe up and say I was caught picking my nose. I was plugged up from mowing lawns all day and parked behind a gas station on my way home. I was really going to town and pulling out a snot mulched leaf mixture with every scoop from my thumbnail. With both nostrils clear I survey my work in the rearview mirror and out of the corner of my eye I see a puff of smoke. Someone on their smoke break watched my mining effort. My heart sank to the earth's core from embarrassment. I shamelessly pick my nose all the time, not deliberately in front of people, but being around someone if they're not looking directly at me. I'm going to do it. This is a thing most people do. They just hide it. I don't care. I want that dang booger out. A friend and I take a leak at a bar in the urinals. We hear some guy in the stall and I quote, "You're a dirty little toilet and you, yeah, I'm going to get up all inside you, take that crap." We are quietly laughing our asses off at the sink as he flushes. The dude steps out with a horrified look and his face quickly turns to owning it with a smug smile. First time in my life I left my credit card at a bar since I meant to close out after taking a whiz, but was laughing too hard amongst our group recapping the story. I was walking my dog with headphones in and thought no one was around since it was 6 AM. She poops once I pick it up. Starts pooping again like 10 minutes later and she's looking at me like sorry for pooping again and my genius comment back to my dog is "It's okay Nix. The second poop is the most important poop." Cue in a guy jogging by busting out laughing so hard he had to stop running. But the third poop is the most satisfying. When I was 7 or 8 my buddy and I had a sleepover at his house. He lived on a farm so we could walk in the pasture out back and frick around in the grove. Being the snow was still patchy and melting it was pretty muddy and so when we got inside we needed new clothes and a shower. I was first in the house so first in the shower. I get done he goes in, takes his shower all while I'm playing his Xbox. For context his brother owns a beanbag chair and his brother's door is opposite us so you can see from one room to another. He gets out I hear the shower go off. And almost immediately after the shower is turned off I hear the door slam open and wet stomping running down the hardwood hall into his brother's room. I look over at his brother's room and I see him furiously humping the beanbag chair butt cheeks. Spread and red butthole in air. As I look in horror he looks back and laughing and says I'm drying off. Needless to say I didn't go to his house again. I kept reading the first part as you would frick in the grove. I was so confused. Someone yelling, and the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and they said to the man running the stand, "Hey, pom pom pom, got any grapes?" My mom caught me playing with my armpit hair. I was, for some reason, absent-mindedly pulling on it and she said something like most people shave it, not pluck it. I was doing a temporary live-in nanny gig for a 2-year-old girl. Her parents were separated, so on this one night, she was at her mom's apartment. I guess the dad thought I was at my house, as I went home on my off days, so he was in the kitchen eating ice cream in a business shirt and underwear. He apologized for seeing him like that, so I just went to my room in the house afterwards and we never spoke of it again. I once saw a chick who looked like a Victoria's Secret model picking her nose waiting for an elevator in Vegas. I was incredibly drunk so it seemed like a good idea to growl in a faux southern drawl mid-yara get and dear nice and deep like and she glared at me and angry walked away with a face about as red as the Bailey. Their dress and stiletto heels she was wearing. I'm totally sober and agree this sounds like the only reasonable thing to do in your shoes. This is less me finding something and more my friends finding out. We had built a fire pit at one of the houses when I was in school. Landlord approved. One night during the summer, we were all drinking by the fire having a great time. One person got up to get a beer, another to go smoke around the side of the house. And soon enough it was just me, a bottle of bourbon, and a fire. It reminded me of my grandpa, who'd passed over a decade prior. I just stared at the sky and started talking to him like he was there. Explained that I doing well with classes, had a couple goals for my life, still working on that book for him about life lessons. Just stuff you'd tell your grandparents when you visit. After a minute of catching up I looked back towards the fire and went back to drinking. A hand landed on my shoulder and one of my fraternity brothers who I wasn't the closest with apparently had come back to hear my chat. We just nodded. Didn't mention it again, but after that we got a lot closer after that. He's one of my best friends now, all because he wanted to get a beer. When I was in school, during PE, that's what it's called, right? Sports and stuff, I went to the toilet. As soon as I opened the door I saw someone take a crap in the sink. He didn't see me and I just closed the door, walked back to my group and told them. For me it was either he's done soon and leaves really quick or this is going to get awkward. Sadly they didn't catch him. Was sitting on a high rock on an empty beach. Saw a bunch of tourists with a tour guide. One girl separates herself from the rest and walks along the shore towards my rock. She looks left and right and then squats down right in front of me to relieve herself. It was so sweet. I kept dead still so as not to embarrass her and she never noticed me. I'm a girl too so know how I'd feel if I was mid-pee only to find someone right there. I stepped out of the back office to help a customer during my lunch break one time back when I worked in retail. When I came back in, my boss was standing above my beef fried rice with a long piece of said beef dangling from his fingers above his open mouth like a baby bird. He dropped it in, chewed, turned and saw me and said I always wondered what that tasted like then hurried past me out the door. We never spoke of it again. Frickin' power move right there. I didn't watch her pee. I also didn't know what she was going to do until the last minute. I just decided not to draw attention to myself as I would have given her a huge fright. I was high above her, not on top of her. She was perfectly safe and made her way back to her group none the wiser. That was the sweet part. It was totally innocent. You didn't post this as a reply to the original, but I knew what you meant all along. My little brother, 17, licked the dog's face after my dog licked his face. It was just a full cycle of face licking. It weirded me out. I don't see the issue here. So the guy didn't think he was alone, but thought everyone was sleeping, if he was thinking at all. After a long night of drinking a group of us all crash on the friends' couches where we were at. I was awake early but didn't want to move and accidentally wake anyone. I see one of the guys get up and look around. I swear he sees that I'm awake and we make eye contact. He then drops his pants and steps completely out of them. I think maybe he got hot or is uncomfortable. No big deal. He kind of stumbles around the living room and makes his way to the TV, where he drops his underwear and turns to squat with his butt to the TV. I am stunned into silence. Do I ask why he is attempting to crap on a TV? Is he sleepwalking? Any outcome now is going to be awkward. Before he actually manages to crap on the TV he stands up and looks around. I think he's just woken up and realized he's not in the bathroom. Not the case. He then walks over to sit on the arm of the couch with his butt hanging over the feet of one of the people sleeping. Oh seven hells, he's going to crap on the couch and sleeping person. I've no idea what stopped him, but again he gets up. He then walked into the kitchen to pee in the sink. Of the three options this is obviously the best. I could never look at that guy the same again. I think he was sleepwalking. My friends and I were drunk in a pub. When I was taking a crap in the stall my friend came in and didn't notice anyone in the bathroom. He looked into the mirror, splashed some water in his face and said to himself, "Come on man, you can do this. Don't give in, etc. etc." Of course I chuckled but didn't say anything. What also made it more funny is that he was quite new to the group so he had to keep up with our drinks. Now years later he is quite the alcoholic of FHE group. That's a depressing story. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.